Hello. Yeah, I thought I'd loads of time as usual, and then I was messing around doing something and didn't. I also got a message saying that um on Chrome that there's an echo, some bug. I'm hoping there isn't. Uh, I'm checking. Hang on, I'm going to check on the other computer and just see. This is boring, this stuff, but you see, I messed up the sound on the last time I did a video because I had music on, so I always mess it up for a different reason. Well, hey, no echo. Okay, we can continue. The lives tend not to be as smooth as the uploads. And speaking of uploads, I got loads of views on the Gansai Tambi video, the watercolor set I got. So that was the last upload. So that's great because I was going to do this live stream anyway to mess with the palette further. And this is the palette. This is by Kuretake, and they're calling it the Art Nouveau palette. That's what it's commonly known as online. They've got an Art Nouveau picture on the cover there, but yeah, I think everybody online is doing the same thing I'm doing, going around trying to find out as much about their new materials as they can, because this watercolor set, wait for this now. Ooh, isn't that beautiful? Even though I've used it and I've messed it up a little bit, I haven't really messed it up. Yeah, it's supposed to behave a little bit differently to ordinary watercolors. And on my first test of it, I discovered that, yeah, it does. That's true. But it's supposed to behave differently. So once you know this about it, you're prepared, aren't you? So we're going to mess around with it more today. Um, I didn't have time today because I ended up in this hurry for no reason except I didn't keep my eye on the time. But if you didn't see the uploaded video, that is a good introduction, I think, to me trying out the set for the first time and showing you colors and things. But I'll put it in the description afterwards. And then the other thing I'm going to put in the description of this video afterwards is um a link to sort of chapters of this video, because I want to make chapters for the video because I'm not just painting and mixing colors with this um, Kuretake set. I'm going to show you how my book turned out, my little kids book. So I'll leave that till the end of the video. I'll keep an eye on the time, leave that till the end of the video, and I'll just show you how that turned out. I was pleased. There were good things about it and bad things about it because it's still not in my shop, but I'm getting there. Okay, so I have a few pieces that I did for that upload. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're not going to just kind of replicate those pieces today. We're going to do further color mixing, but I will use some of the props that I had on that video for our references, because when you're trying out something new, uh, you're trying to paint something, aren't you? So, you know, uh, to match colors, so basically I had these flowers, which were hydrangea, and I was trying to match colors on them. And I was interested in that, not just because I think they're amazing flowers, but because I have failed very spectacularly to get them very well in ordinary watercolors yet. But the colors of this particular set looked very good for trying to get these. So I was also messing with a few different techniques. I had my liquid draw brush pen, which I really like. Had that out because I wanted to do a pen and ink wash technique on, I did it on watercolor paper. Then I came along with rice paper, and this is a very absorbent rice paper I have. I got it from, it's actually another YouTuber who has a website. The YouTuber's name is Fiona's ID, and she has a website called Ink Different, and she sells all kinds of papers and things for traditional. She's a Chinese lady, and traditional Chinese painting she sells things for. But she was telling me there's loads of cross pollination between Chinese and Japanese painting ideas. Um, so she's great. If you've never used this kind of paper before, I got loads of advice from her and what kind of papers to use from things and everything. She's very approachable about being asked questions on her channel about those kind of things. But I'm trying a different rice paper today because this one is super absorbent. But as you can see, you get a totally different effect on that paper than you would doing the same subject on a watercolor paper. So if you don't have rice paper, watercolor paper, if you were going to paint along today, would be super. But I will be trying a slightly, I think, less absorbent rice paper. I have another lot of rice paper in stock that I just bought off Amazon or something like that. But I wasn't happy with it at the time because it's slightly less absorbent. And the other thing you can paint on, I discovered because of Henry Lee, who also has a very good YouTube channel doing painting with traditional materials like these. He was talking about use of mulberry paper as well, and he does Chinese painting. He's excellent to look at as well. So we're not exactly doing Chinese painting. What we're doing is, you see, this is why I was interested in this set. I'll just show you what I was up to last year. Last year, right, I have an oyster in this because the whites mixed into this kind of paint are made with shells, oyster shells being amongst them. Isn't that fabulous? But last year I became obsessed with that fact because I discovered from another channel called, what's it called? Kaiteki, I think it's called, art. Um, that there's this stuff called goffoon, right? Made from this, that you make a kind of a paste from, that they use as a kind of a wash sometimes on paintings or mix into the paint. And I was trying to do it without having goffoon, which is too expensive for me. You can buy it, it's a powder you buy, and then you mix it up into this paint paste, and you can paint on things with it in a kind of a glaze way. But I was trying to emulate that I bought a potter's pigment. Now it's not quite the same, but I really like some of some Japanese and Chinese art has a beautiful cloudy kind of thing going on with it. And last year I got obsessed with that kind of effect and thought it was so beautiful and started doing experiments. So these were some of the experiments from last year with that kind of style of doing things. I was trying to invent my own style in a way because some of the materials were like the GoFun were a bit too expensive for me, and I was trying to get similar kinds of that lovely cloudy effect with um, glazing in different mediums. So like something like that was done in a watercolor, but then I came along and I mixed up a pigment into an acrylic glaze and glazed over them. And so, of course I was going to be interested in this set, wasn't I? Because it's got all this white in a lot of the colors. So it's quite different already from your standard watercolor set because the colors are tonal with all the white in them. And it's kind of, I thought, well, that might be kind of good for getting that lovely cloudy kind of thing I love. And it is, because look at the way it turned out there and the way it turned out here with the addition of the white in a lot of the pigments. It does the cloudiness very nicely. So it gives a dreamy kind of effect, to some of the paintings. Now look at some of it, you can go fairly vibrant with it because some of the colours don't have as much white in them. Um, and you can get it to look punchier as well with your use of a brush pen with India ink, which isn't going to move when you put the colour over it. Or you could get experimental and get yourself some of this stuff, which is sumi ink, um, which is a kind of an India ink as well, really. And you mix it up yourself on a little grindstone. You put a little bit of water in and you go in circles and mix your ink. It's very relaxing and zenny. So you use that, and that's what I did here. You'll see it in the video upload if you haven't seen it yet. Um, that's what I did here. I did some outliney work with the sumi ink. And then I sort of filled in thing. I just dropped in some of this watercolor. But the watercolor, one thing I do notice about it is you don't need to do as much flooding with water as ordinary watercolors. So I'll show you what I mean. And we'll have a look at the other really cool thing about this stuff. I think this is so cool. It's worth having a little palette knife on hand for this because your little pans lift out. The colour is written underneath them in English as well as presumably Japanese. And I'm going to take out two of my favorite colors here for discovered because I was trying to do those flowers. There's the grayish blue. And for a palette, I'm not using, for brushes, I'm not using these very sort of traditional brushes because I actually need to get new ones. I've discovered some of them are like that one are very old now and they're getting very worn down. So I have my eye on a new set of those. But these kind of brushes are absolutely fine, whatever you've got on hand that you use for watercolors normally. But I'm using a real heavy watercolor paper at the moment, and we'll get it in a rice paper out later. But for mixing, if you had on ceramic, that'd be great because they're just enjoyable to mix, and on using ceramic, they're just going to be more fun to mix, you see. I'm actually going to use two brushes because I don't want to do this getting the thing wet. Now, I don't have a whole lot of water on that to activate it, you see. So that's it, reasonably thick-ish. We'll see how thick we can go with it. Already I have my brush mixing up the colors. The other trick that I have going is I have a cloth here that I just wipe on. That's kind of handy. That'll get wetter as you go along, but that's fine. It's still for cleaning off brushes. Take the excess water off them because you don't necessarily want a big load of water, but they can be watered down quite a lot as well. So we're just seeing how thick they go first. That's the first trick. Okay. So this is pretty thick. Okay, now let's water that down more, keep adding water. So you're going to be probably experimenting like this with them for a while because if they behave differently to ordinary watercolors, hiya Kathy, oh, and I'm glad you dropped in. I'm glad people enjoyed that upload and want to find out more about these because I want to find out more about them too. So we're all experimenting together, you see. And one of the things that I was interested to see was how they blend. And a lot of people are saying these don't blend great. And that is because you can get the kind of cauliflower effects in them very easily. Um, but if you want a very smooth gradient of a blend, that's a bit trickier. But I'm going to work with that. You see, I have this theory that if you work with what materials do rather than try to work against it all the time, that you're really doing what that medium does best, you see, and making a beautiful thing of it. So there's another color that I love. This is one of my favorite colors. And I have discovered that, say there's a color like that I like, or for me, the color will be this ecru beige. You might use a lot of the color you really like and want to get it again, but not want to buy the whole set again, you know? I'm gonna just drop the pink in the bottom and see how it blends up. Look at those colors, they're so beautiful. This is actually what I'm thinking about today. I'm going to do this with that potter's pink background to it because I noticed on the upload that the piece of paper I had this flower on, which is actually a beigey brownie color, came out pink on the video. Came out a bit pinker, and I really liked that against the flowers. So I want to do that because some of these items can look, if you don't put in any kind of background, they can just like look like things floating in space, objects floating in space, which we don't necessarily want to see. Sometimes people like that effect, but you don't want it on every single picture. So I'd like to get some background in. But what I was saying about this was this color, I know I'll be using a lot of this color, but I managed to get a UK stockist of this that will ship to me in Ireland. So I can actually order a few extra of that pan because I know the colour and everything, you see. And they have a number associated with them as well. So that's handy. Oh, you've scrolled back. Okay. Right. So that's what I'm thinking. It's so dark today. I hope you can see okay. I do have a light on my the side of me here if we go really dark. I think it's coming up okay. The position I am beside the window, it'll pick up light where there's light there. Now you see how tonal they are. There's one or two colours in it that are really punchy. It's quite a clever little set. And because there's a lot of white in them, look at how dirty the water has gone already. So when you're working with these, I would suggest that you have a really big jar of clean water as well as whatever your main water source is, because I don't want to get extra white in this red, which is a vermilion, which is a bit like a cadmium red. It's a very hot red, but it doesn't involve having. I don't think it involves having a whole lot of white in it. Ooh, and it's so pretty. Look, and I'm seeing people saying that these aren't a granulated paint, but when I've mixed them right, and I'm trying to show you how they blend across here. When I've mixed them, I have noticed that as they dry, they get a granulaty effect that I know my paper is slightly textured on this pad, but I'm kind of used to this paper. I think there is a little tiny bit of granulation going on with them. And there's another thing I've noticed with them, with the paint. The paint tends to behave like ink in that it has a tendency when you're using it thin to pool towards the edge of the thing, of the bit of paint you've laid down, and be much darker around the line around the edge. Now, I think that's beautiful. And I think that's something, we could consider just a beautiful thing about this paint that we're working with. not against, so don't fight it. You might find that, like me, you might say to yourself, oh, that's a bit different from my normal watercolor. You can see it here in the red, that is an alizarin crimson, and it's kind of pooling towards the edge, like an ink would, and my ordinary watercolors weren't doing that as much. So I have seen people doing floral things with that effect that are really beautiful, because they're coming along and they're doing their petals individually, and then they're letting them all kind of run in. So that's my flower, right? And I'm going to do a thinner bit going into the middle. They're letting the pigment run out towards the edge. Now, I wanted to actually make that thinner. It's quite hard to put on a thin enough layer. You have to add the water afterwards. And if you have a little thing like this that you can just flood with water, it's quite handy. Trying to take some of the pigment back out up there, you see. So you can get it quite pigmenty. And that there is just with one color, right? So it's nice. But the effects that I was doing, I was using two colors first. So if we have a look at this, I won't use the pink. I'll use that color again. And I've lost the color because I lifted it out off the palette. There it is, right. So you can see the kind of consistency I have there. It's thin, but you can see that kind of, what it reminds me of? It's like terracotta flower pots or something, that kind of clayish appearance to it. So if we were doing hydrangeas, if you look at them, these are weird flowers because they've actually got only four petals, but they're a nice shape to paint because they've got a heart shape with a little kind of sticky up bit, and then they come in. So you're just doing four of those. And you can even paint the shape first. If we were using, say we were using those kinds of brushes, if we wanted to do it a traditional Chinese or Japanese way, well, even if we're not on rice paper, you'd be holding them more at that angle. But I'm just using a normal brush. Normal. Well, that implies the other one isn't normal. It is normal. Not for me, because I don't use them all the time. But I would look forward to getting that set. So uh, you could actually just paint that in very thinly first and then drop in your thicker pigment into the edge, you see, if you want to do it that way. But they're when you look at them like this, when the pigment goes on thickly, the color, it's not really saturated because it still has white added, but it goes on thicker. But it can also spread the way you would expect a Sumi E ink to spread. So it can be beautiful. And it doesn't mind being played around with a little bit. So you see how you can get that kind of effect. So let's see, can we get the purpley kind of feeling there? And there are a few purples in it, this old mauve being one of them. And I'll try not to infect it with the other colour that I have there. I've heard people saying that they wouldn't advise spraying the palette first, and I can see why. Number one, this palette, it's got Well, it feels like plastic, but it's not. It's just coated cardboard. So that would go very soggy, wouldn't it, if you did that spraying thing? A lot of people have these kind of sprays for their watercolors, and we don't want it to go all soggy like that, you see. So, but they don't need it. They don't need it because they activate very, very quickly, you know. So, if I hold this up, you can see that bleed effect going on. And it's nice. It's, you would be used to that to a certain extent from watercolors, but there's just something a little bit different about how these guys do it. Let's try a different purple. So I'm not sure I've matched that purple the way I want it. And if I don't like either purple, I can always mix them. But ooh, isn't that nice? That's more the purple I want. And part of the zenny thing is just watching the color spread. I think that's so pretty when that color spreads out. And you can pick color back up out of it if it's spreading too far. And you can happily work back. And that's what the little cloth on my table here is for, you see, for wiping off some of the water. You can happily work back into this, mess it about slightly, and still be left with a very beautiful, subtle effect. But if I let that dry, and I saw somebody else doing this, and it was a gorgeous effect. If I let that dry, um, and then come along and do another layer of color over that petal, it's not going to probably be exactly on the line, but that gives this beautiful, delicate effect where you have kind of a twin line with two different, slightly different colors happening on the same petal. And that's beautiful. So I'm going to let that dry and just see what happens. You can see with the red here, it's going into that cauliflower sort of effect that these do tend to do. Um, that I don't mind. Like, I'm just going with it. It's done it on this one as well. They do it more than ordinary watercolors, I think. But again, because I was looking at, just like you guys, was looking at all the videos on these Gansai Tambi watercolors, a lot of people were taking advantage of the fact they do that and doing, one person was doing a little landscape, and the uh, letting all that cauliflower and clumping kind of effect of the watercolor be part of the landscape. And I thought that was a wonderful idea because it added this wonderful richness thing. And already just the subtlety of the colors that they've included in the set, I mean, they're so beautiful. This is exactly what I wanted to know. Hi, Miguel. I seem to remember you from Inktober videos, if I'm correct. We said hello to each other during Inktober, I think. So I'm all enthusiastic today, you see, because I'm trying out this new set of Kuretake watercolors, which are a very different kind of a thing. And later on in the live stream, just towards the end, I'll be showing how the book I was working on turned out because I got the test print back. So this is kind of what I did in the video upload for testing these watercolors, and I was trying different techniques. So because these take a while to dry, I'm going to do a few things on this page, then let it dry, go and do something else on another page, and come back to this and see, can I layer another layer of watercolor on top of this and see how it likes it. Because I only got to do it really on this one. But obviously this is a live stream, so while I was doing the other video, there's a lot of waiting around for things to dry. But you're going to have to, if you're using these kinds of materials, you tend to have to develop a way of working that you're working on one bit over here while the other bit is drying. So I'll just show you the kind of approach I had to doing this. And I'm going to use, for reference, I'm going to use this. And the hope is that when I have kind of the first layer of this done, that I can let it dry and then I can come along and put in something in the way of a background on it. Because if you look at this page, the bits of the page where I had some background color going, they're just much more convincing naturalistically, I feel, than having objects like this just floating against white space. That's a look, and that's perfectly acceptable to do as well. But it depends how naturalistic you want to go with things. Um, I could come along with these and for one of the layers go darker. You won't get in this set, I discovered, you won't get really, really dark colors. So this is where that technique of working with the brush pen with India ink in it or Sumi ink as well can give you a painting with a lot more kind of, oomph in it. These are designed to be a very tonal set, you know. They do not do everything. It's not like a watercolor palette that has your basic colors for mixing in. Something that for this I think is very helpful for generating interesting new colors from these 24 colors, right, would be to look at um, a color wheel, because on a color wheel, and some I have a few live streams up about this actually, about color mixing and getting neutral colors. On a color wheel, if you take the color that's on one side of the color wheel and mix it with the color that's opposite it from the other side of the color wheel, you end up with these really interesting colors that are brilliant for doing things like this bit in here, shadows, you know, neutral colors. They're sort of neutral colors, we call them. And they're those kind of weird in betweeny colors that are great for things like backgrounds, you know. So we'll just lay down a little bit of groundwork for this one. And I'm going to use some of the very sort of muted colors in the set for this. So let's pick a nice green. There's a sort of a green that's a bit more muted than some of the others. And I'll get out this to do this in. And this is, I think it's called a pea green. Yeah, pea green. And it's really nice. I really like it. It's a very spring-like green, but it's not uh, too saturated. It's soft. So with these, you wouldn't necessarily have to do loads of mixing if you didn't, if you were somebody you weren't that happy with having to do a lot of mixing before you lay down any color. So they're a really nice set like that. That the original colors they've mixed don't look very acidic or just too much, you know. Okay, now I am going to come along and I'm going to do a darker edge on this with one of my favorite colors, but obviously I have to wait for it to dry. And then if I was doing a background, which I hope to have that kind of potter's pink color, I have to wait for it to dry as well, or else they're going to really run into each other because look what happens. There's my pea green. And this is actually just watching it do these things, you learn, right? And it's so enjoyable too. And you could do lovely abstract things with these. Watch this now. Ooh, like this. Just drop a bit of water in between them and watch them do their thing. And you know, you could roll it back and forth if you want, but you can let it do its thing for a few minutes. So I could turn that into a shape like a seed head or something like that, and let that dry, and then drop my wonderful color I'm going to show you in a minute down the side to make a little shadow, and it'll just look like an autumn kind of a seed head anyway. Hiya, Mary Moss. Yeah, it's a nice green. I know you're thinking about the set now. When I saw this set, I said that. I said, I have to have it. I have to. It's not expensive. For something that has 24 colours in it, I thought it was great value personally. And the quality of it was terrific. This is the pea green we're using. But let me show you. This is going to sell you in the set now. I'm not sponsored, obviously. I'm such a small channel. I'm not sponsored. But I love these colors. No, this wasn't my favorite. Hang on, I'll show you my favorite. This one just makes me happy. This makes me so happy, this color. It's getting really dark in here, but if I turn on the light, I find the color gets worse than in natural daylight. Watch this. Now I'm going to drop it in there, so it's going to do the cauliflower thing, but just as a color. This color is called shadow green. So it's green, but not as we know it. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? This reminds me of one of my favorite color inks from Diamine, which is called Aurora Borealis. So it is a greeny color, but it's a very moody. Oh, sorry, I'm moving out of picture. It's very moody green. It's actually on my screen looks a little bit more viridian than it is in real life. But now look at this when you don't mess with it too much. That's going to dry in a beautiful way. So I think there's a lot to be said with this kind of a set for not messing it about too much. And in some of my experiments like this, I messed it about too much and worked back into it. And I get away with that constantly with ordinary watercolor. But with this, um, it's at its most beautiful when you don't, I'm finding. But this is wonderful because this would open up our art practice fantastically into us becoming very spontaneous. And I'm a great believer in changing your materials regularly to keep the spontaneity in what you're doing. Sorry, I'm filling in some of the berries in this because I want them to dry so I can come back to them and do more work on them. And that bit there is still not dry. Uh, my shadow green would be perfect, you see, for running down the edge because the light is coming from the left on those ivy berries, and the shadow is going to be on the right, isn't it? So this weird little seed head thing here is coming along well. I'm going to put little fuzzy bits on it, but really there are so many things around, where I am at the moment, definitely in nature to work from already. You don't really have to make up stuff. You've got stuff there to work with to get you started, get the creative juices going. And another thing that I thought I would do involved this. And I think this is a nice thing to do. Yeah, Marie, it's a bit opaque because it has it's a tonal set, meaning it has a lot of white in it. So see this kind of color. It has a lot of a stuff called gofun in it, which is made of shells, oyster shells being the traditional way you make it. And you can actually buy that gofun stuff separately. And I tried making it once. So they put that in the colors. And I'll just show you for the laugh. I tried making it when I was obsessed with doing this kind of art last year. And it's, if I can find where the experiment is, I can get oyster shells, you see, no problem. But grinding them up, I had problems. So here was my attempt at grinding oyster shells to do a layer of that gofun white. It's a paste pigment that you make. Sorry, I'm after bashing the camera there. And I didn't have it ground up fine enough. but it was to get that wonderful kind of a cloudy finish on these that I really like. I was getting a bit obsessed with trying to get, I was seeing it on a lot of Japanese and Chinese work, and I really admired the effect. So you can get it with these watercolors, you see, because they've got white in them to make them more tonal. And they sort of, I was saying that they remind me a little bit of terracotta in that kind of lovely, they have a lovely kind of a clay look about them, you know. And even when they settle, this one is starting to dry now. When they settle down in that beautiful natural clay. It's like looking at stone or clay when you look at them. It's really very, very pretty and subtle. And but look at, some of the effects, you can get quite dramatic effects by mixing the colors that have the most of that white pigment in them with the colors that are a little bit more um transparent. So let's look at another color and I'll show you what I mean by that. We'll look at one that's fairly transparent. Green gray, I think, is fairly transparent. So we look at that as a color. That's a beautiful color for shadows as well. But you see what I mean? That one has less white in it. So not only is it a zoomier color, and you can get a just darker color out of it, but it's got a different feeling to it. So you could layer that with that if you wanted to. You could use that for your shadows and things. I'm working back into this one now. It's dried a little bit. Just working on the edges of things. But I have heard people say, and I think this is correct, that if you're mixing things, you're better off not to mix more than 2 or 3 colors at a time from the different palettes. And I found that to be so because the more I was mixing, the more um the more what would you call it? Mucky the colour was looking. It just started. If I could show you the one I had with the head, that one started getting really mucky when I was messing around with it. And it wouldn't normally do that for me, with normal watercolours. So this layering approach might be better. So say I wanted to have a blue in this, Potter's pink here. A better approach might be instead of mixing up 3 different pinks and 2 blues, the better approach might be, and bear in mind I'm new at this myself, might be to just get your layered blue over it and drop a little bit in. Okay. And I'm gonna try, because I think this is dry now. I'm gonna try that thing I was talking about where you layer things, but miss the edges a little bit. I liked that effect a lot. So let's see how it goes on this one here. And again, I'm wiping off some of the excess on that little cloth. You see that kind of, it's very subtle effect, but you can get kind of other types of things happening when you do that. So I could do that with my blue or with a different pink or with the purple, and you're sort of getting different kinds of things happening. So imagine I want to put in a background in that. My background could be um, layered all the way up to the original edge of the flower there, but then out again. But you do still have to be careful with them because, oh no, I was saying this on the other video, if I do this on the edge of something, not doing it too bad actually on that one, but it lifts very easily even when dry. So this one here is dry, but look, it's reanimating very easily. So that's not really like ordinary watercolors either, which you might only have a few minutes grace in. And this is because the binders are different. The binders aren't as permanent, if you like, as ordinary watercolors. Hiya, Tina. And I think some of the binders in this are things like gelatin instead of your watercolor binder would typically become Arabic. So they all affect it. And I didn't think it made a difference, but people said, "Oh, and the gelatin makes these shinier, little bit glossier when they finish as well." So maybe it does on rice paper, but it didn't on these kind of papers. It stayed very matte for me, but it does depend on how thick you put them on as well. Apparently, you know. Yeah, they're beautiful, aren't they? Trina, sorry, I thought it was Tina for a minute. My sight should be better because I have new glasses, but it doesn't appear to be. Okay, so I'm going to try something else. They're all still drying a bit there. And I'm not really trying to create finished things, but I am trying to show you some of the effect. Look at this. Ooh, isn't that lovely? You see, I think these do. They talk about granulating watercolors. I would call that granulation there, what it's doing. It's really lovely. And this brings me to the thing that I wanted to try. I'm just gonna mess around with it. Hang on, I want to mess around with color a little here on this color. It's another one of the more transparent colors, Mars Yellow. And I'm going to do this before I have a go with that landscapey idea. And look, I have a table full of these different colors, but let's say you're only working with 2 or 3 colors at a time. You could be kind of neat and just take out your few colors you needed, or you could work entirely from the set in the box, if you wanted to. But I have a habit of wanting to have things right up close to me when I'm working. Being blind, I got new glasses the other day, which I'm getting used to, but I'm liking the fact I can see. I am enjoying that. I think I can see better. Even though I'm working in a nearly by now dark room. So you see how I'm mixing the color just with layering technique here. And it works, doesn't it? It's very nice. So that was the blue I really liked, which was grayish blue, that one, with Mars yellow on top. Yeah, Mars yellow, which is a very orangey yellow. And it's just sitting very happily there, isn't it? But you see the way the blue all goes up towards the edge of where I put the color down? The way it pools and it's just a delight. It's pooling differently in different places. So doing something fairly simple with them, just it does work, doesn't it? And um, I'll take another kind of in betweeny color to show you. These are going to be wonderful for landscapey and natural world things because I do a lot of that kind of painting. This is going on a bit thicker now here, but I do a lot of landscape stuff and a lot of sort of botanical up close stuff. I'm not a botanical artist because some of them, the detail they go into, and they're so talented, the watercolors. But I do like doing that kind of stuff. And they're going to be wonderful for all that, like nature stuff. So cool for that. Isn't that pretty? Just the delicacy of them. Like even the way that's kind of flooding into that, there's some accidental things happening that you cannot control, but they're wonderful when they happen. Like, like this pooling and everything. There's that delicacy about them that just makes me really happy. So let's try and apply this to a landscape. And what I'm going to do for this is the rice paper job, right? Because a lot of people find it hard to find out about traditional ways of using these kind of paints. And one of the traditional ways is using rice paper. And this is a brand I got on Amazon. I have no idea what the name of the brand is. Not speaking, I think it's Chinese. But sorry, I'm going to make this a smaller piece. But I'll show you, my vague idea about how I would work with rice paper because I use rice. And I think you're going to love it. If you've never used it, you're going to go, oh, I want to use rice paper now. Okay, bye, Trina. Thanks for dropping in. And hope you enjoyed it and have a good day at work. Don't work too hard now. And have a nice feet up session when you get home. Chill out. Okay, so now there's two sides to this. One is smoother than the other. I'm going to use the rough side. And this is felt. So if you were going to do this, might be an idea to have something under it. You can use cardboard. It gets very wet though, that's the only thing. But felt will work. And in the upload, I was showing me working on a softer rice paper. So I'm using this for the reference. This is an oil painting I did during the summer on a very wet day. But I thought it'd be nice for doing a version of in this, just to have something to refer to so I'm not completely lost going into it. So I'm going to just drop it in fairly wet, and bearing in mind that when something's wet it'll look completely different from when it's dry because you've got rice paper being so absorbent. And where did I put the one I did earlier? Typically when they're dry it dries out with more edge showing on it. But it's such thin paper, it goes all the way through. But there are different grades of rice paper. And like I was saying earlier, if you want it to not bleed out as much, you can use things like mulberry paper. And I'm still learning about all that stuff. I don't think I'll ever be expert, to be honest. But so this is an ivy green, which is another very warm, not as tonal green. But when you activate them, you can kind of see the white in them coming up. And this would be the perfect time, really, to use a Sumi-E style brush. This one is so worn out, though. I just discovered the last time I went to use it. I don't really have, in this set, you don't really have greys, but you could mix a grey with your shadow green color and your very pale beigey color. But I'm just using some of the colors I haven't used yet. And I want to show you some of although it's not a situation for a very blue sky to happen, the mountains in this were very blue. So I want to show you one of the blues that I had. So I'm sort of mixing that with the beigey color up the top. which it wasn't actually called beige. What was it called? Yeah, it is beige grey, which is not a particularly greyish colour. But you can see how it was actually lashing rain that day. There's another video on my channel. If you haven't seen it, you should take a look at. It's about going painting on a very rainy day. And I'm up mountains with it lashing rain on me, absolutely lashing. Gonna get my shadow green out here. Oh, a big tree down the side. So you see how those clayish colours alongside the stronger colours are lovely, really, really nice. And you can get them doing a nice bleed kind of a thing. You know, you can leave bits of the white paper as well if you find that interesting, because don't forget the paper is part of the composition as well. And then I could go in with ink if I'd wanted to. I could, you know, go in with the Sumi E thing first or afterwards if I'd wanted to. But um, I'm happy doing this kind of thing with it, to be honest. So I'm going to make the opposite shore of this little thing with Venetian red, which is also one of the nice transparent colours in the thing. Yeah, Marie, look for the one with the rain. You'd like it. It's I put it up in the summer. It's not very far back. And I think the thumbnail might have a bike on it, but it does definitely have the word rain in the title. So you'll recognize it when you see it. And if you're anything like me, you enjoy seeing other people having adventures that are uncomfortable adventures while you're sitting indoors, all nice and cozy. I like Arctic exploration and things like that. Ooh, look at what they did down here. Isn't that nice? I like that. The thing with some of these is not to mess around with them too much. My mountains have completely disappeared, so I have to put them back in. I have no mountains in that one. So I'm sticking them back. Yeah, Ireland, we do rain well. Okay, so you see how all the edges get lost to that. Now, if I'd put less water in, I could control that a bit more, but not that much more on that page. So this paper, which was I thought this white rice paper didn't bleed as much as the other one I had, but you know, it made no difference in the end. Um, this one, um, some I could get some lines. So those black lines were made with Sumi A ink, which was that one I was showing you that you grind up yourself. I could have done that with the brush pen with India ink, because India ink is permanent, remember. But you can see me dragging that brush there I used, dragging it very dry across the page with the pigment on it. So that is the point, I think, really, of having this cloth is very handy for wiping, because you load your color on and then you do a little wipe of the color with your brush and then pull the brush across. And with these kind of brushes, I don't know whether they're no, they're not hog bristle, are they? It's a little bit too soft for hog bristle. I forget what kind of, they're all different kinds of bristles. But if you pull them apart, you can get more textures and everything going, and effects which give great immediacy to the thing. And I was trying to in here trying to do a more traditional watercolor style. So there's if you get the sets of those kinds of Chinese brushes, you'll probably get a few that are little pointy brushes, and because you're holding the for Chinese painting, you're holding the brush up this way, so the point you're painting with the point a lot. You're taken some of the water off the brush first, and then you're able to, fill in very carefully and slowly to control that bleed. But the paper is very important as well, I think. And as I say, I'm not an expert on it, as you can see. But look at the unexpected things that happen. We like those, you see. So I think uh, this set is just so interesting. I'm going to leave some of the white on that. So interesting, and there's nothing to stop you working on those then when they're dry again. So all the layers of these, I could continue on here, do more layers across, and it'd be like mountains, layers of mountains with fields of different colors or bushes on it. And you could have quite a happy time doing that. Same with these, you can keep working on them and keep learning. So I think it's a wonderful set. The other thing I said I'd show you, and I said I'd show you at the end of the stream, is uh, the book. If I can figure out where I put it. Oh, yeah. This is something I was working on live streams, and I have a series of kind of design, illustration, and layout live streams, right? So this was the last thing I was working on, was a little book project, which I thought was going to be a quickie, and it turned out to take ages. And it's still not really finished because I tried to upload this is the test book that I sent away for. I just tried to upload it this morning, and I couldn't get it to work. It kept saying, "Oh, something went wrong, try later." So it's still not in my little shop. But I was doing those live streams for anybody who was really into illustration and wanted to try some sort of a little book. And this is a photo book. And loads of companies do these. They do drop shipping. And you can make a little photo book. You could write the book yourself, like I did, and illustrate it yourself, or take favorite poems or something that you like and illustrate them. And then use a photo book to lay out your pages. It's not perfect. You have to make compromises. And I made some compromises because I was working in a sketchbook. These are from original sketchbooks of mine. And the sketchbook is that shape, but my little photo book is square, isn't it? I just loved the square format because it reminds me of a certain Beatrix Potter set of books that are square, and I think they're lovely for little hands and everything. But I should have thought it out a bit more carefully, because you're going to have like layout problems and everything because of that. But it actually came out better than I thought it would. Um, and it's an interesting thing to consider doing. And I had these in my sketchbooks. These are watercolors, ordinary watercolors. And I had them in my sketchbooks, and I thought it'd be nice to have these all in there's another Beatrix Potter fan. Marie knows what I'm talking about with the Beatrix Potter books. I never read her as a kid, but I remember seeing those little square books in the library, and I thought, I love that shape. I really love that shape. And that is something that really it makes your book appealing to people, is if there's something slightly different to the norm about it. Now, you see the compromises I had to make there with the layout of the book. And I had to point out on the book that it's from original sketchbooks in order for people not to think, oh, she didn't do her layout very well. Because otherwise, what I would have had to do would be spend loads of time in GIMP or Photoshop color correcting all these. And to be honest, it was a small project. I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to get my book, all the pages of it, in order, because I did the sketchbook pages for that out of order. And the flow of the story didn't make any sense. And it does now, you see. So I was pleased with the way it came out. They're good quality. Once you put good quality scans, upload to these formats, they'll give you good quality. And drop shipping is good because you don't have to order a big load of books yourself. The person comes along, orders from your little shop because you've integrated whatever, this was gelato, but you've integrated that company's product in with your shop. So you don't have to deal with it really after that at all. You have your product there, and if somebody wants to buy it, they buy it. And the company ships it to them as they need it. You don't have to order like 200 books in advance. So I don't have to pay out through the nose to produce a little book, you know? And I could just order a test print for myself there. That was something I wanted to change. Like they have limitations because I couldn't do that either this morning. I wanted to move that up a little bit. And it wouldn't let me go in and re-edit the book this morning. It might next time. It might be just a glitch on their site. I don't know. So, don't expect brilliant things from these companies, but expect pretty good. Their quality is pretty good. So I was pretty happy with that actually. Yeah. I think, well, it was supposed to be, Maria was supposed to be in the shop today, but I don't know. The site wasn't cooperating today. I know the book format is fine and everything because I ordered that test copy. So it must be just the site is glitching today. Sometimes you get that with websites that or it could be my internet or something. I don't know. But within the next few days, hopefully. So, and I like to encourage artists to do these things, to try things in kind of new formats themselves, and don't be afraid to try new materials. I have to put all these back down. So, yeah, thank you for anybody who newly subscribed because they saw that video about the Gansai Tambi watercolors. I hope you enjoyed the live stream and got something out of it and had a bit of fun and everything. And yeah, have a little root around and see what else you like on the channel. And I'm on every Friday at I'm in Europe, so it's GMT, which is kind of English and Irish time. I'm on every Friday at 2 p.m. unless something weird happens. So I try to keep all my timings and everything fairly standard, and then I'd upload a video. I upload shorts maybe a couple of times a week, depends on how I'm feeling, but all I do kind of slightly longer uploads. I try and do those about every 2 weeks, sometimes a bit more, but not usually less. So yeah, enjoy the channel and thanks so much for dropping in. Bye.